Welcome to Renaissance of Wrestling. And with the title here, who is the most underappreciated wrestler? Now, when I look at this title, and when I look at what I mean by this, there's so much ways of going about it. And I intentionally didn't use underrated because it's very it's just how do you define underrated? It's very hard. A lot of times what people really mean is underappreciated, to be honest. There's ways of looking at it, and it's when I look at underrated, I think, were you put in that position of being the main guy? How do people who are fans of wrestling and watched you speak of you? This is kind of what I go by with underrated. But with this wrestler that I'm thinking of, it's hard for me to say he's underrated because he had some great pushes. He was enough of a main guy to deserve it. But when I think about the discussion around him, he doesn't get appreciated within the community the way he deserves to. So I'm what and this is exactly why when I wanted to talk about him, I had to say underappreciated and not underrated. Because just trying to say he's underrated might put him in a category where he becomes overrated. I don't know. But and that just feels hard to believe him being considered overrated. But the person I'm speaking about, I'm not gonna hold you guys too long, as Triple H. Triple H is someone who I believe is underappreciated. And I probably just had a bunch of people who clicked off of this right now. And they're probably saying, no, it's Daniel Bryan, it's Bret Hart. But how can we say that they're underappreciated when even Natalia has gone on record to say Bret Hart is remembered a lot more fondly now? We are remembering Bret Hart very fondly today. To where it's to say that Bret Hart's underrated, how can you say he's underrated when he's in every conversation as being underrated? I don't believe you're underrated if you're in every conversation as being underrated. To be considered underrated, you have to be a name that's not mentioned in this category to the point where it's like, this guy is underrated. And that's the same thing with Daniel Bryan. That's the same thing with CM Punk. I'd even say that's the same thing with Chris Jericho. These guys are not underrated anymore because it gets spoken of so much in this category. Triple H, on the other hand, is someone who's not spoken in this category. I've seen people who they bash Triple H because they're like, oh, his backstage politics, his reign of terror. Listen, I was a prime wrestling fan during his reign of terror, and I couldn't wait to see him lose his title. And when Batista finally ended that reign of terror, I was very happy. To where it very much felt believable when he became a face, I believe, 2 years later. So if we're going to relegate his whole career to just that 3 year period where he was having this reign of terror, did not have really good feuds in that 3 year period. We're talking about someone who had a wrestling career that spanned 20 years. So now we're just going to make like those 17 other years did not happen. I don't think that's fair. Actually, to think about it, the Reign of Terror, I believe it technically started in 2003. Please, someone in the comments quote me on that, please, or correct me on that information. I believe it started in 2003 and not 2002. So let's say it was 2.5 years. We're going to discredit 17 to 18 years of his career over those 2 years. But the main reason I think he's someone who's very underappreciated is I look at the conversation people have of what's a great wrestler, quote unquote, and it's always the same style. Someone who they can't even define their style in the ring. It's a technical wrestler. What, like, really and truly, what does that mean? And to me, I feel like that erases the conversation of the high flyers in the business, the submission specialists in the business, the powerhouses. And when I do think of a technical wrestler, someone who really I do think fits that mold very well, as someone who they don't look for the submissions, they don't look for the power holds, they don't look for the high flying spots. It's Triple H. Triple H feels like he can really embody any of those styles. I guess another style I just remember and thought about right now is the showman, the brawlers. Triple H feels like he can embody any of those styles at any moment. He had so many moves that you looked forward to. And that's what I like with a wrestler is, sure, you could throw out 30 to 40 different moves every single week. Nice. It's kind of overwhelming to me personally. It's kind of like, to me, if I was to compare it to fashion, it's like someone who wears a camouflage jacket with an American, like an American pattern shirt, and then they have checkered pants. It's just too much going on. You can do all that, but I'd rather see someone where I'm like, you hit your 15 moves. You've made these moves feel special because you do them on a regular basis. And almost every one of Triple H's moves felt like that. He had his running knee. He had his, like, I don't even know what it's called exactly, but he would wrap his leg over your leg and he just dropped down to the ground. It was like, it's like knee pressure thing that he did. He also had like a knee drop that he did. He would do the figure four on occasions, and I've not even yet mentioned his main moves: spine buster, the pedigree. These things that really felt like, oh, okay, we're getting into that stage of the match now. He knew how to tell a story in the ring. He knew when to bleed. He knew when to sell. And when he did those things, it made it feel special. There's so many matches I could look at. You put Triple H in a match with someone who is a competent wrestler, he had a great match. Like, people want to look at his match with Scott Steiner and say, oh, like, this is Triple H as a wrestler. This is him. And that's all him. Okay. Watch Triple H versus Undertaker in any three of their WrestleMania matches and tell me that those weren't really good matches. Watch Triple H versus Shawn Michaels in any of their matches. There are so many matches that Triple H has where he really put on a show. And the reason I say he's underappreciated is because look at everything I just said about him. And I'll say this. There's so much I said about him, and he was really in a certain place in wrestling, or why I can't say he's underrated or overrated is because he was really the person in wrestling where he was right where he should be. He wasn't overpushed really at certain points. Sorry, okay. I'll talk about the reign tear in a second. I'll get to that. He wasn't underpushed and he wasn't really overpushed. He was right where he should be. He was not really going to feel like someone who transcended wrestling because he was really such a student of the game. He really showed so much of those things, yes. But he never felt like he was really going to transcend wrestling. Even though he had his TV spots, everything, he just didn't transcend wrestling the way I guess he probably should have or could have. I don't know, but he just didn't. But he was definitely someone who held the title and was someone that deserved to be where he was. Like when you think about someone who, The Rock, Stone Cold, they couldn't hold the title every single month. Someone who can feud with them to break apart those two guys from facing each other. Someone who could hold the title, make it still mean something. It was Triple H. Someone who, like, you still had Undertaker, you still had Kurt Angle, but Triple H was able to be that guy, very reliable. Even then, he's someone who his character never felt flat. You're talking about someone who went from being Hunter Hearst Helmsley, this rich blood, to being in DX, to being with the McMahon Helmsley faction, to being the game, and he's that damn good, to being in Evolution, back to being in DX, to then again just being the game, the King of Kings, Triple H. He's always known how to evolve his character and make his character feel special. If we're talking about someone who is a master class of wrestling, someone who knows how to make it work, it's him. So that's who I'm talking about right now when I say underappreciated wrestlers. So when we talk about that criteria of someone who is lost in the conversation in the internet wrestling community, comment it down below who you see yourself as underappreciated. You might change my mind. As of right now, that's my decision. Comment down below who you think is underrated. Comment who you think is overrated. And one name I will not take. And if you guys want to see me make a video of it later on, one name I will not take as overrated is Hulk Hogan. And I'll explain that in the video. But if there is anyone that you see as overrated, please comment it down below as well. In the meantime, thank you. This is the Renaissance of Wrestling podcast, or the Renaissance of Wrestling.